He married his mistress and brought her into my home like I was furniture he could replace. So I made one call. And watched his empire crumble, investor by investor, until all he had left was regret. I hadn't even set my bags down before I noticed the change. The foyer still smelled faintly of white lilies. Habit not sentiment, because Daniel insisted fresh flowers in the entry made us look prosperous. But someone had replaced the silver-framed photograph of our wedding with an abstract oil painting. Swirls of red and orange bled together like an accidental fire. I stared at it for a beat too long. Then I took a deep breath, closed the door behind me and rolled my suitcase to the side without removing my heels. "You're back early." Daniel's voice echoed from the living room. I followed it like a thread I wasn't sure I wanted to pull. When I turned the corner, there he was, standing beside the open bar cart, 2 glasses already filled. One was sweating in his hand. The other sat untouched beside a small, half-empty bottle of Japanese whiskey I never liked. I looked past him. The coffee table had magazines I didn't subscribe to. The throw pillows on the couch had changed, pink velvet with tassels. Her taste. Her touch. She was here. 3 days early, I replied coolly, placing my tote on the arm of the couch but not sitting. I finished the Zurich meetings ahead of schedule. The board was cooperative. Daniel smiled as if I had praised his dog. "That's great. You must be tired." I let my gaze settle on the hallway behind him. One of my heels clicked slightly against the tile as I stepped forward. "Where is she?" He didn't blink. Didn't stutter. "Upstairs. Unpacking." Her name was Callie. She was 29. Her Instagram bio read, "Love is luxury." She had 43,000 followers, a yoga clothing sponsorship and 2 brand ambassadorships for hair gummies. I knew all this because I'd done my homework long before Daniel assumed I'd be in the dark. Callie wore the same perfume as me. Or rather, she started to after Daniel gave her my half-used bottle on one of their getaways. She posted a story about it once, tagged the scent with a glittery gif and wrote, "Borrowed from his nightstand." Sure. It wasn't the affair that surprised me. It was the lack of imagination. Dinner was quiet. We sat at the kitchen island, Daniel pretending to scroll through emails, me slicing the roasted beets I'd made hours before my flight. He hadn't prepared a thing. Not even ordered in. As if he'd expected me to walk in, see the other woman in our house and offer to make a salad. "So," I said, spearing a piece of goat cheese. "You married her." His fork paused midair. "I was going to tell you." "I'm sure. It just happened." I gave a soft, humorless laugh. "Like stubbing your toe on a courthouse?" He shifted in his seat. "You were always away. Always working. And you were always trying to prove you didn't need me." I sipped my wine and looked him dead in the eye. "Turns out you did." Daniel didn't respond. Just went back to chewing like the silence was edible. Upstairs, I found a pair of blush pink slippers parked beside the bed on my side. My side. A silk robe hung on the bathroom door, barely tied. There was a curling iron still warm beside the sink. My jade roller had been moved. Her skincare lined the marble counter like soldiers marking new territory. I didn't cry. I opened the walk-in closet and took out a leather-bound notebook from the safe behind my rows of blazers. I carried it downstairs under my arm like it was a contract. In the den, I dialed a number I hadn't used in months. The line crackled and then a voice answered with one word. "Scarlett. Pull the plug." There was a pause. Then a low whistle. "You sure?" "Yes." I closed the notebook. "Leave him dry. I'll sign the offloads by morning." Daniel didn't notice the silence in the walls that night. The staff didn't come in the next morning. Callie posted a boomerang of herself sipping oat milk cappuccino in the kitchen, captioned, "He calls me queen of the castle." I watched it while getting a pedicure at the Ritz-Carlton spa with Leanne, my best friend and until recently his lawyer. Leanne frowned at her phone. "He's either really stupid or really suicidal." "He thinks I'll come back," I murmured, flipping the page of a fashion quarterly. "Or maybe he thinks I'll just disappear." "You won't." "No," I said softly, "I'll make him wish I had." By the end of the week, 3 of Daniel's 4 primary investors had withdrawn interest. Quietly, quickly. The 4th? That was my father's holding group. They hadn't made a move yet, but they would. Once I said the word. In the meantime, Daniel called twice. Once in the morning. Once at midnight. I answered neither. That Friday at 3:46 p.m. I returned home. I pressed my fingerprint against the biometric lock and stepped into my own house like a guest. Callie was curled on the sectional in silk pajamas, eating strawberries from a ceramic bowl and watching a home renovation show. She didn't hear me at first. But when she did, her face did this flicker, this twitch of entitlement turning into alarm. "Oh," she said, blinking. "I didn't know you were back." I stared at her, then at the bowl. "Those strawberries were imported. They spoil in 2 days." She looked down at them, then back at me. "Daniel said you were moving out." I smiled. "Did he also say this house wasn't in my name?" Silence. "I designed this home," I said, circling the couch slowly. "Every tile. Every beam. The thermostat learns my body heat patterns. That wall changes hue depending on the sunlight because I'm sensitive to migraines. Even the air purifiers in this room, set to my allergy profile." "I didn't mean," she stammered. "I'm not angry, Callie," I said quietly. "I'm not here to fight." That seemed to relax her until I leaned in. "I just want you to remember," I whispered, "when this place collapses, it was never built for you." Later that night, Daniel banged on my suite door upstairs. I opened it slowly, wrapped in a navy robe, my hair still damp from a bath. "Why are you doing this?" he said, his voice fraying. I raised an eyebrow. "Doing what?" This game. You can't just strip everything away because you're bitter." I smiled. "Oh, Daniel," I murmured. "You really thought you could bring another woman into my house and not owe me rent?" He stared at me. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Get out. Of the room. Of the house. Of the life he thought was his." By Monday morning, the air around Daniel smelled like sweat and desperation. The hallway reeked of his cologne, too much of it. A poor attempt to mask the fact that he hadn't slept, maybe hadn't showered either. I passed him on the landing as I came back from yoga, barely offering a glance as I adjusted my mat strap. His eyes were bloodshot, his dress shirt wrinkled and buttoned wrong. "Scarlett," he said, voice hoarse. I paused. "Not for him, out of curiosity." "Yes. I need to talk to you. You always do when something isn't going your way." His jaw twitched. "It's serious." I gave him a thin smile. "It always is." I continued down the stairs. Callie's voice floated up from the kitchen. "Babe, we're out of oat milk again." Leanne met me for breakfast at Amelie's, a quiet bistro tucked into the corner of Oak Ridge and Rose. It was one of those spots that didn't have a website and didn't need one. Everything smelled of sea salt, yeast, and burnt butter. She was already seated by the window, tapping away on her laptop. When she looked up, her sunglasses slid down the bridge of her nose. "He's called me 5 times this morning," she said. Last voicemail sounded like a man reading his own eulogy. I took the seat across from her and unfolded my napkin slowly. "Is that the part where he blames me for turning his investors into ghosts?" He chuckled, sliding me a croissant. "He hasn't even figured out the why yet. Just knows something's rotting." I bit into the pastry, savoring the flakes on my tongue. He should have married someone who reads the fine print. The first investor to pull out was Nair Holdings, based in Mumbai. They'd been softening for a while, ever since Daniel let the Virex partnership fall through with one too many ego plays. He didn't realize that I still had the ear of their COO, mostly because she and I used to share a driver during our years at Wharton. The second, Ogilvy Venture Capital, followed 2 days later. That was easier. The founder, Grant Ogilvy, had hit on me at a gala 2 years ago. Daniel had laughed it off. I hadn't. And the third? Ashbridge. That one hurt Daniel the most. They had been his anchor, his backbone, his first yes when he started Whitestone Developments. What he didn't know was that Ashbridge's new president had been my father's protege. And loyalty, as I've learned, is best when it's inherited. I returned home that evening to find Callie pacing the living room in a matching silk set the color of bruised lavender. "Scarlett, hey," she said, trying to sound breezy. "Do you know if the Wi-Fi is down?" I opened the smart home app on my phone. The network was stable. I said. "Might be on Daniel's side." She laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, maybe. He's been on the phone all day, poor thing." I nodded and turned to leave. "Oh, and she added quickly, some of my friends are coming over this weekend. We're doing a little dinner thing. Nothing crazy. Just a girls' night." I paused halfway up the stairs. "This weekend?" "Yeah. Just Friday," Ah, I said, feigning surprise. I thought Friday was the day we meet with the appraiser. Her face blanched. What appraiser? The estate appraiser, I said smoothly. We're liquidating. Liquid, what are you talking about? I turned fully toward her now, still poised halfway up the steps. It's just protocol. When assets are going to be divided, someone has to assign value. Even to glassware. But Daniel said. I gave her a kind smile. Daniel says a lot of things. The cracks grew louder by the end of the week. On Thursday, Daniel showed up at my temporary apartment downtown. The doorman buzzed me. Your husband is downstairs. Says it's urgent. I took my time putting on lipstick before I said, send him up. When he walked in, he looked thinner. Or maybe just older. He wore the same blazer he'd proposed in, but the collar was wrinkled and the elbows worn. This is insane, he said the second he saw me. I poured myself a glass of cucumber water. I agree. You married your mistress. In my house. His hands flew up. It wasn't like that. Callie was. I raised a hand. Daniel, if you're going to defend her, please at least come up with something more original than she understood me. You sound like a rejected character from a Netflix show. He paused. Are you doing this to punish me? I blinked. No. I'm doing this to correct a poor investment. He stared at me for a long moment. We built that company together. Yes, I said. And I kept the receipts. Meanwhile, the subplots of my life unfolded with a quiet hum in the background. My father had called me twice in the past week. Not to ask about Daniel, but to ask about me. He never liked Daniel. Too flashy, too talkative. That boy's all angles and no center, he once said after a charity golf event. Now his voice was low and careful on the phone. How's the house? Full of oat milk and poor decisions. And the business? Bleeding. He paused. Do you need me to make the call? Not yet, I said, twisting the cord of my robe between two fingers. Let him sweat. I want to see what kind of man he becomes when the floor starts shaking. On Friday the storm came. It started with an emergency board meeting at Whitestone. Leanne texted me a photo from inside the conference room. Daniel, arms crossed, a forced smile pasted on, Callie in the background in an outfit that screamed, tried too hard. The investors didn't show up. The Zoom links didn't work. The dial-ins failed. As I had them rerouted. Quietly, efficiently. Instead, the board faced an empty room, an echo of vanishing confidence. Daniel stormed out by 11:43 a.m. By noon, Callie was crying on the staircase, her voice shrill. You told me we'd have a life here, Daniel. He didn't answer. That night, I poured myself a glass of Merlot and watched the lights of the city from my window. Leanne called, laughing. You should have seen his face, she said between sips. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She sighed. Then I remembered he had the gall to bring her to your ski cabin last December. I smiled. I rest my case. On Sunday morning I dropped by the estate one last time. The cleaners had arrived, the appraiser was scheduled, and the air smelled of lemon polish and cold panic. Daniel was in the study staring at his phone. He looked up when I entered and for a moment he didn't speak. Then quietly he asked, Is it too late? I tilted my head. For what? For us. I walked to the window letting the silence stretch. Then I turned and said, Daniel, you lost me the day you let her unpack her slippers in my home. He stood desperate. I was stupid. But I thought you didn't care anymore. No, I said softly. You thought I'd never leave. And I didn't have to. I made one call and everything else left you. The house felt too large that week. Not to me, of course. I hadn't lived there in over a month. But for Daniel and Callie, who were now orbiting each other like two satellites with no planet to cling to, it was becoming a mausoleum with mood lighting. My lawyers had already begun the asset division process. I hadn't filed for divorce just yet. I wanted Daniel to sit in limbo, watching the life he built on stolen ground slowly unravel thread by thread. He was running out of money. He was running out of time. But he still hadn't figured out that he was already out of power. I got the call from Alfred, my accountant, at 9:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. Scarlett, he said in that mild voice that always made people underestimate him. Daniel's frozen his liquid reserves. I didn't pause brushing my hair. To keep me from touching it? Probably. But the irony is he's mostly freezing air. There's barely anything left that's fully liquid. Most of his assets are either in joint holdings or leveraged. I set the brush down. And Whitestone? I asked. Alfred paused. Scarlett, it's bad. They missed their margin call yesterday. Their loan cushion is gone. If they don't secure emergency funding this week, they'll be in default. I let the silence hang. Then I reached for my phone. Don't move on it yet, I said, voice calm. Not until Friday. You want to let it cook? No, I replied. I want to watch it boil. Meanwhile, life outside Daniel's world kept moving. It always does. My neighbor from the unit above me, an elderly woman named Elaine, had locked herself out of her apartment that same morning. She knocked on my door wearing mismatched slippers and a pink sleep bonnet, asking if she could borrow my phone. I swear I just stepped out for the mail and the door locked itself, she muttered, holding her cat in one arm like a football. Do you think building security hates me? I smiled and waved her in. She sat on my couch, stroking her orange tabby. You always have this composed air about you. Like you're rehearsing everything 10 seconds before it happens. I poured her a glass of water. Maybe I am. Elaine looked at me with sharp blue eyes. That boy who keeps pacing outside, he yours? I sipped my tea. Used to be. She said, scratching her cat's chin. He's too pretty to be useful. My assistant Camila showed up late for our strategy session with a Starbucks cup in each hand and tears in her eyes. I raised an eyebrow. Latte or confession? She sniffed and handed me the lot. It's Derek, she said. He said I'm too ambitious to be lovable. I leaned back in the conference chair. And what did you say? I told him I was ambitious because I planned to love myself better than anyone ever could. I smiled. Good girl. Then I leaned forward and slid her the quarterly report. Now let's channel that energy into bankrupting your ex's new client. Back at the house, Daniel's house, things were melting down in slow motion. Callie had stopped posting. It was the first sign. The stories were gone. No filtered cappuccinos, no outfit of the day mirror selfies. Not even her usual just a girl manifesting tweets. Daniel had stopped showing up at Whitestone's offices. The staff noticed. Leanne sent me screenshots of internal emails. Is Daniel on leave? Does anyone have access to the updated expense file? The Vistron team pulled out. Who's handling damage control? They didn't know what to do without someone to tell them what to pretend. Friday came. I wore cream trousers, a silk blouse, and heels that could break a weak man's soul just by clicking down the hallway. I entered Whitestone's lobby at exactly 10:03 a.m., just as the morning meeting let out. Whispers followed me. Some of them recognized me. Some of them didn't. But all of them looked. Daniel was in his office with the blinds shut. I walked in without knocking. He looked up from behind his desk. Hair a mess, collar undone, the screen in front of him filled with red graphs. Scarlett, he said. Please. I can't. I held up a hand and sat down across from him. I'm giving you a choice, I said. You can either sell me the remaining 35% of Whitestone you control, or you can let it die next week when the banks call in your loans. He looked like he wanted to cry. He didn't. But he wanted to. You'd really destroy everything we built? He whispered. No, I said. You already did. I'm just collecting what's mine. He leaned back in the chair and looked out the window. You win. I tilted my head. Daniel, this wasn't a game. When I left, Callie was in the lobby. She looked thinner. She had no makeup on. Her eyes were puffy and she clutched a cardigan like it was armor. I can't believe you're doing this, she hissed. I paused at the elevator. Doing what? Ruining him. Ruining us. I blinked. Callie, sweetheart, you moved into my house. She looked like she wanted to scream. I leaned in, my voice ice. Tell me, do you miss my bathroom oils? Or the silk pillowcases? Or the staff that no longer comes because they all worked for me? Her lip trembled. He said I was different. I smiled, stepping into the elevator. He was right. You're cheaper. That night, Leanne and I met for a quiet drink at a rooftop lounge. The city sprawled below us like a glittering confession. She raised a glass. To pulling the plug. To letting them drown in their own mess, I corrected, cliquing mine to hers. You ever think about what comes next? I swirled the wine in my glass. Not yet. You could run Whitestone now, she said casually. Turn it around. Rebrand. Or burn it down just to buy the ashes back later. I tilted my head thoughtfully. No, I said after a moment. Not yet. I want to see how far he'll fall without anyone left to catch him. On Sunday I drove to the estate one last time. Daniel was sitting on the porch, shirt untucked, tie loose, a half-empty bottle of wine beside him. He looked up as I parked. You came. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking softly. I wanted to see if you were still breathing. He chuckled bitterly. You win. I sat down across from him on the stone steps, arms folded. Stop saying that. There was nothing to win. His voice cracked. Do you miss me? I thought for a long moment. Then I said, I miss the man I married. I don't know who you became. He put his head in his hands. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought, you needed me. I stood slowly. You were the second key, I said softly. I already had the first. The press found out 2 weeks later. It began as a whisper in one of those niche financial blogs that only trust fund tech bros and retired hedge fund managers actually read. Then it spread, faster than wildfire, sharper than rumor. Whitestone's founding partner ousted after stake transfer to estranged wife. Callie Rivers, Instagram model turned wife, silent after asset seizure. Meet Scarlett Vaughn, the woman who pulled the rug. Leanne sent me the first article with just 3 words. Enjoy your crown. I didn't respond right away. I was sitting in a quiet corner of the newly leased office in Tribeca. An old textile warehouse reimagined into polished concrete and steel beams. Sparse furniture. Exposed brick. Sunlight slicing through the windows like truth. It smelled like cedar oil, new ink and potential. This was mine. Not Whitestone. Not a charity project built from Daniel's vanity and my architecture. This space was the root system of something new. Something clean. I didn't plan to take over Daniel's mess. I'd let him keep the name, dirted, dying, irrelevant. I didn't want the house that burned. I wanted to build a city on the ashes. Camila walked in, balancing 2 black coffees and a folder bristling with color-coded tabs. You're officially trending on LinkedIn, she said, placing the drink in front of me. How tragic, I murmured, flipping through the folder. He grinned. Should we send a thank you basket to Callie? Without her, this PR cycle wouldn't have the same flavor. She's not worth a fruit basket, I said, scanning the projected pitch for our acquisition firm. Maybe a scented candle called Poor Judgment. Camila laughed. Do we make those now? I shrugged. We could. We were curating a team, carefully. No rushed hires. I didn't want former Whitestone loyalists or corporate leeches trying to sink their teeth into a fresh project. I wanted wolves in heels. Quiet killers in tailored suits. People who had lost, learned, and were ready to earn it back with bloodless precision. Scarlet Incorporated wouldn't be built on rage. It would be built on memory. Elaine from upstairs invited me to a community poetry night in the building lounge. I almost declined. But her cat had gone missing 3 nights earlier and I'd helped her print flyers. The least I could do was clap politely through amateur sonnets. The room smelled like baked apples and folding chairs. There were maybe 20 people there. Someone played a cello near the window. Another woman read a poem about rain and old lovers. It was quaint. Lovely. Entirely un-Daniel. Elaine leaned over halfway through and whispered, You're the youngest here by at least 20 years. I smiled. Means I'll win the wine raffle. On Friday, Daniel showed up again. Not at the apartment. Not at the office. He waited for me outside the gallery where I was attending a charity auction with Leanne and a few of our new investors. He looked like hell. No tie. Ice puffy. A faint wine stain on the cuff of his shirt. Scarlett, he called, trying to sound calm. Can we talk? Leanne raised an eyebrow from the sidewalk. That man looks like he's been sleeping in a rental car. I'll only be 5 minutes, I told her. He checked her watch. I'll give you 4. We stood under the awning, away from the camera flashes and hors d'oeuvres. Daniel looked like he hadn't breathed in a week. I need help, he said. Scarlett, I'm drowning. I looked at him evenly. You married a lifeguard. She left, he whispered. I blinked. Callie. She packed up yesterday. Said she didn't sign up for this. For losing everything. Said she missed stability. I fought the urge to laugh. He looked so broken. Not ruined in the poetic sense, just undone. Like a shirt missing too many buttons to ever hang right again. She told me I was nothing without money. I tilted my head. And were you? He didn't answer. On Monday I met with my father. He sat across from me in his gray cashmere sweater, eating salmon tartine and sipping chamomile tea like he hadn't once been feared by 5 industry boards and an entire Wall Street corridor. I spoke with Daniel, he said without looking up. Oh. He called me last week. I smiled faintly. And? He asked me to reinvest. Said he'd turn it around. Just needed a buffer. And? My father wiped his mouth with his napkin. I told him if he wanted a buffer he could borrow a pillow from one of his girlfriends. I chuckled. I'm proud of you, he said, finally meeting my eyes. That meant more than I expected it to. That night I got a text from Callie. Just one sentence. He's yours again if you want him. I didn't respond. Because he never was mine to begin with. He was just an expensive lesson. Camila's ex, Derek, reached out. Wanted to get coffee and talk. She came into the office the next morning in a blazer 10% too sharp, lip gloss too shiny, energy practically electric. What did you say? I asked as she handed me her updated budget sheet. She smirked. I told him I don't do decoff X's. I grinned and nodded toward her laptop. Schedule a call with Atrium. Let's poach their analytics lead. Done, she said, already typing. By midweek, Whitestone was on life support. The building's lease was ending. The staff had been slashed to a skeleton team. Their last 3 clients backed out of contract renewals. Daniel stopped trying to call. I assumed he was lying low, nursing pride in whatever hotel still accepted his Amex. Then on Friday the doorbell rang at my apartment. Daniel stood there with a cardboard box in his hands. I have nowhere else to go, he said quietly. I stared at him. No one will hire me, he continued. Everyone thinks I'm a liability. The firm's reputation is what you built, I finished for him. Without thinking who you were building it on. He stepped inside. Just one step. I miss you, he said. Not the house. Not the money. You. I looked at the box. Inside were some files, a few cufflinks and a photo of us in Prague. I can't undo it, he said. But I can tell you I was wrong. I didn't reply right away. Instead I walked past him to the window, let the city wash over me again. Lights like language. Streets like maps of every misstep. You were wrong the moment you made me optional, I said. His voice broke. What do I do now? I turned back and met his eyes. You start over. Just not with me. Daniel didn't leave right away. He stood in my apartment doorway for a long moment, fingers curled around that cardboard box like it could hold the version of himself he'd lost. But I didn't tell him to go. Not then. I didn't need to. Watching someone try to bargain with the ghost of what they destroyed, that's punishment enough. I went into the kitchen and turned on the kettle. The sound filled the silence between us like something scraping against glass. He hovered near the edge of the living room. Didn't sit. Didn't speak. Just waited. I watched the steam rise behind him like smoke from a building already burned down. Do you want tea? I asked without looking at him. He shook his head. Still don't drink anything that doesn't come with a label and a year? I said just to slice the air. He didn't answer. Camila arrived a few minutes later. She froze in the doorway when she saw him. Should I come back? No, I said, pouring the hot water into my mug. You're just in time. Daniel turned toward her awkwardly. Hey Camila. You look well. She blinked once, then set her laptop bag down beside the kitchen island. Thanks. You look like you got dressed in the dark. The tension split for a second. A flicker of a smile tugged at my lips. I didn't realize this was a work meeting, Daniel murmured. It's always a work meeting, I replied. That's how people survive. Camila raised an eyebrow. Do we need to call security? I was just leaving, he muttered, picking the box back up. He paused in the doorway. Looked back at me one last time. I'm sorry, Scarlett. I nodded. I know. But I didn't say I forgive you. Because I didn't. That afternoon we finalized our acquisition of Everline Analytics. A small but fiercely talented tech team based out of Denver, with proprietary software Daniel once dismissed as cute but clunky. I remembered how he'd waved away the pitch, too focused on glossy real estate deals to see the long game. I saw it. I always had. Their founder, Ava Lee, met with me personally via Zoom. I looked you up, she said after the introductions. Is this revenge funding? I smiled. No. It's reclamation. She considered that. Same outcome. Just fewer bullets. I don't believe in bullets, I said. Only pressure. We signed papers before sunset. Elaine's cat reappeared. He wandered in from the stairwell like nothing had happened, tail twitching, fur matted with dust and street grease. Elaine burst into tears when she saw him, cradled him like a baby, and insisted I come over for dinner to celebrate. We ate roast chicken with too much lemon and looked through old photo albums while her cat purred beneath the table. Is it strange, she said over her third glass of Pinot, that you remind me of myself at your age? Probably, I replied. I burned a man once, she said, eyes sparkling. Not with fire, with silence. I laughed. It's the quieter burn that leaves the deepest scars. The next day my mother called. That in itself was unusual. She wasn't one for check-ins or idle chit-chat. But she'd seen the headlines. Everyone had. You're handling it well, she said after some obligatory pleasantries. You mean I haven't cried on a podcast? She chuckled, but there was a weight in her voice. You know, when your father and I split, everyone expected me to fight back. I didn't. I walked away. Because you didn't want revenge? I asked. Because I didn't need it, she said. But you? You needed this. I didn't deny it. You were always his smarter half, she added. He just thought you'd never realize it. By the weekend, Whitestone's doors had closed. The lease expired. The office furniture was repossessed. The final staff payroll bounced. The company had been carved hollow from the inside. Contracts broken, partners gone, reputation dead. Daniel moved into a rental in Brooklyn. Small. Furnished. A place that came with rules. No renovations. No hosted parties. No custom walk-in humidors or glass floor wine cellars. He signed a 6-month lease. Leanne texted me. He asked if I'd help him find work. I texted back. Would you? She replied. I told him we only hire people with references that don't come from the court of public opinion. Camila's pitch to Poise and Pine, a boutique finance firm, landed. It had been her idea to poach them after their former creative director left for maternity leave. She handled every call. Designed every deck. Scheduled every round. We signed them Friday morning. Congrats, I said, handing her a glass of sparkling cider. You just brought in your first independent client. She beamed. You know, she said, swirling the drink, I used to think loyalty was about sticking with people through bad times. Now I think it's about recognizing when they stopped being good for you. That's not disloyalty, I said. That's clarity. Daniel emailed me Sunday night. Subject, dinner? Body, just a talk. Not about business. I just want to sit with you again. For an hour. You choose the place. I'll be there. I stared at it for a while. Then I forwarded it to Leanne with one line. Should I? She responded, only if the restaurant has mirrors so he can watch you glow. I picked the place. A small Italian spot in the West Village. Dim lights. Thick velvet booths. Not trendy, not flashy. Just private. He arrived before me. Wore a jacket this time. Clean-shaven. Hair combed. Still looked older than he was. I sat across from him and didn't say a word for the first 2 minutes. Just let him squirm in his own silence. He finally broke it. You look amazing. You look like you've seen consequences. He winced but nodded. I deserved that. I studied him. The man I once loved. The boy I once believed in. The partner I once trusted. I don't want anything from you, he said quickly. I just wanted to say it out loud. That I know I broke everything. And if I could go back. You can't. He swallowed. I know. The waiter came. We ordered. We ate. We didn't touch our wine. By the time the tiramisu arrived, he looked tired again. I miss you, he said for the second time in as many weeks. I wiped my mouth gently with the linen napkin. I miss being someone who didn't know better, I said. He nodded. I just hope someday you'll think of me kindly. I tilted my head. No, Daniel. I'll think of you accurately. And that would have to be enough. 2 months passed. Daniel stopped trying to reach me after that dinner. No more emails. No more doorstep pleas. No late-night messages sent under the influence of nostalgia or bourbon. Not because he'd moved on. Because he finally realized I had. The world was quiet again. The tabloids found someone new to sink their teeth into. The novelty of the betrayal faded, as all things do when the next scandal steps into the light. And in the calm that followed, I finally had time to breathe in the stillness I'd carved for myself. I filled the days with strategy meetings, office expansions, and Camila's increasingly ridiculous spreadsheet color codes. I took early morning yoga classes again. I found joy in trivial things like discovering a bakery that made cinnamon croissants with smoked sea salt. I was not rebuilding. I was starting. The apartment started feeling too small. It wasn't about the space, it was about the echo. I'd grown too large for it. Not in stature but in mind. In ambition. In vision. Scarlet Incorporated wasn't just thriving, it was morphing. Quietly acquiring undervalued tech old legacy firms, boutique data companies. My network had grown. My name, once whispered in connection with him, now stood cleanly alone. I looked at townhouses on the Upper East Side. Just looked. Then one Sunday Elaine met me in the elevator. She was dressed in linen and sandals, holding a glass dish with foil over it. "You're not staying here long, are you?" she asked. I blinked. What gave it away? "You stopped buying candles," she said. "People only keep decorating when they think the walls matter." I smiled. "You should have been a detective." "I was," she said, winking. "Just didn't get paid for it." She handed me the glass dish. "Peach cobbler. For wherever you're going." I moved into the townhouse a week later. 4 floors, pre-war charm, high ceilings, and original parquet floors. A small sunroom in the back with ivy creeping up the brick. The kind of house that doesn't try to impress. Guest stands. Quietly. Permanently. Camila helped me unpack the kitchen. "This place is too peaceful," she said. "You're gonna get bored." "I hope I do," I replied. She pulled out a box labeled dining room and found an old photo inside. Me and Daniel years ago at some gala. He had his arm around me. My smile was brighter than it should have been. "You want to keep this?" she asked. I took the photo and stared at it for a moment. Then I tore it in half, threw the right side away and slid the left, just me, into a drawer. Leanne started dating someone. His name was Malcolm. He ran a conflict resolution consultancy for international NGOs, wore glasses with thick frames and cooked like an Italian grandmother. She was tentative at first, hard to blame her. But over late-night texts and shared wine bottles, I watched her fall in love without even realizing it. "He doesn't interrupt me when I talk," she said one night. "That's the bare minimum," I replied. "Yeah," she whispered, "but it's a start." One evening the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I'd just made a cup of mint tea, the rain had just begun tapping against the windows, and I had no interest in conversations that didn't begin with, "Here's that book you asked for." But when I opened the door, Daniel was standing there. Not holding a box this time. Not with flowers. Not with excuses. Just a small envelope in his hand. "I'm leaving the city," he said quietly. I nodded. "Where to?" "Portland. My cousin's startup. It's not glamorous, but it's real." He paused, glanced behind me at the hallway of my new home. "You look happy," he said. "I am." He swallowed. "I just wanted to return this." He handed me the envelope. Inside was a key. The second key to the estate we once shared. "I found it in a coat pocket," he said. "Felt wrong keeping it." I looked at the key, then back at him. "You don't owe me anything, Daniel." "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm here." He stepped back into the rain. No umbrella. No performance. "Goodbye, Scarlet." "Goodbye." I shut the door and locked it, not out of fear but finality. Then I placed the key in a ceramic bowl by the entryway. Not as a keepsake. As a reminder. Scarlet Incorporated opened its second office 6 weeks later. In Chicago. Camila ran point. She hired well, led better, and started dating a graphic designer who wore mismatched socks and brought her fresh herbs from his rooftop garden. "You're glowing," I said during one of our check-ins. She smiled. "Healing looks good on us." It did. On a rainy Thursday, I sat in my townhouse sunroom with a book in my lap and a soft jazz record playing in the background. The cat Elaine had willed to me after moving to Florida curled against my leg. My phone buzzed. A notification from a news alert. Former Whitestone CEO starts over in Oregon. Interview pending. I didn't click it. Instead, I closed the book, leaned my head back, and let the rain sing against the glass. There was no explosion. No screaming matches. No final courtroom showdown. No public spectacle. Just silence. Distance. Consequences. That's the thing about revenge. The sweetest kind doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a red dress or brandish a weapon. It simply leaves you behind. And never circles back.